So inside of this interaction, the points that you're going to make a big difference on a person, especially if you're using it as a killing art, so you've got a person who could have a suit of armour on, is you've got to look at what you call the kyushu, the places where he has to move from. So in a suit of armour, obviously the wrists, the elbows, under the axilla, the neck is protected, but it's got to be cantilevered in such a way that as you move the helmet, you can take it off, so it allows movement, so that allows you in. You've got the throat area the same, you can lift the skirt of the throat area, and the skirt also around here, backs of the knees, Achilles tendons. These are the places he needed for movement, but were vulnerable to you. Now, depending on what weapon you've got, or how you're fighting him, it could be unarmed combat, or you're trying to avoid something, a sword, and you've got a spear, something of that nature, whatever you're doing, is you've got to create those points. So you might thrust at the face, and he might lift the sword up to attack you, or he might lift the sword up to attack you, which leaves his axilla open to attack. Does that make sense? So in that sense, you're looking and creating kyushu. As you close in on a person, and he throws say a punch, when you make contact with his flesh, you've got this kyu that's taking place. So you're using the mai distance, you're then making contact, so then you've got the kyujutsu. So for a moment in time, the signal that you send through his tissue is one of resistance met. So he hasn't overcome, but you're not overcoming him. Now from that, he's got to then make a decision. Now if you're using what I call pedestrian or left brain technique movements, it can be very fast, it can be very effective, it can be very, very decorative if you like. But in pragmatic terms, that's not how an animal would fight. If you watch a cheetah, or you watch a leopard, any of these animals, they'll roll about, the claw, the seeing spaces. There's no straight lines, there's no meeting of anything for more than a second. So once you've got that dissonance in there, you can then change the fulcrum, which then controls his body.
Don't just land on one strike 2 or 3 times.
押しながら体で手でいくんじゃなくて、僕は揺れていく。それでいって、それでパン。どうだい？それで。こんな無難にこなんか引っこないから、実践とかね。はい、これが一番大事で、こう来て、こう押すように体でなる。昨日も教えたね。これで長くね。で、これで。で、この上これ、はい、で、本当にこういうけど、体でパッとこういくから。で、このこう締めてこれが入る。そこでこれが入る。3つ入る。ワン、ツー、スリー。ね、1、2、体です。1、2、これで当たってる。足で打ってる。だってこれ。こうやって見えないで、じゃなくて相手が倒れない。
These strikes are hidden to your opponent, that's why they're so effective. If the opponent sees them, then obviously it's going to be ineffective, isn't it?
パーティー OK。パーンで、パーンそこ、くるで、ポンこれを。OK？ ね、こうやって。ね、と、3つ流れてるのやらないね。
When the three are flowing together, when the 3 strikes are flowing together, you don't see that.
これの足でなの。それをパン、スター、いくつ？はい、これ。
It looks in the video like he's made a block and then he's pushing the arm down. So as he pushes the arm down, the face becomes the next place. So he's blocked from the outside, he's pushing the arm down, then he's punching to the face. As he punches to the face and still walking, his elbow comes through and he hits with his elbow. And you've got to wind it back to meet in the first place. Because if you've got a person with a non-compliant arm and you're making that contact, I'll guarantee you won't be able to push that arm out the way. And he's probably, if he's stronger, going to be able to push you out the way. Now the way that you're moving and changing the fulcrum or the moment of the fulcrum where that tissue meets and being able to send a signal across the interface is the skill. That's the skill. It's the same skill as a cheetah catching an antelope and not causing it to bleed when it shimmies it to death. It's got to choke it in such a way because the wolves and jackals smell the blood. He's got to recover from his chase and they'll come and pinch his dinner. So he knows how to shimmy at great speed. That is the same techniques. So when Hatsumi talks about shimmy, he could get hold of your toe and produce a torsion through your spine that would lock all of our joints. The way the ligaments work are to lock the joints as if it's a reflex action coming from pain or coming from heat. Without it being pain or heat, you can lock your body up and therefore send rotary movements through it. So from your big toe, it's very easy to turn a person over. Whereas if you didn't know those laws, the foot would tear before the person turned, because you'd come to the resistance of the joint, the ligaments would stretch, then they would tear. If you're tension coupling through the way I'm talking, you're joining your body to theirs and sending the signal spiralically through, it produces the movements you want. So therefore you've got a great predictability when you meet a person's limbs to open their body up to produce the kyushu that you're stepping through. So you're not really throwing them. If you watch Hatsumi, he doesn't really throw people. He throws them to the ground or he throws them away. Whereas if you look at the earlier videos with more form in them, it was more hips in, proper throws, almost judo-like type throws and jiu-jitsu type throws. The ways art has matured, he puts you to the floor way before that and in different ways, because he's sending a signal through your physiology to go in that direction. It's the only way that feels safe. And that's controlling a nervous system. You've got to be able to control your own to be able to control someone else's. So a lot of the mind control would come into that. So some of the mudras that they would do, you're concentrating on the earth. So you're on the run. You've got to go to ground. You've got to be like a rabbit or a fox. You've got to hide. So the attitude would be one of going to ground. You could be overexcited or agitated, and that's not going to be good in a fight. So again, you might need to come back to ground. That would lower your blood pressure, lower your brainwave patterning, get you focused thinking, putting yourself back in the moment. So these mudras were very important for mind attitude training as well. He showed us some very special ones that you would do that would precede healing, so that you could then go to a vulnerable point in the body and project energy through that to actually stimulate it. In some ways better than a needle would do. He said that Takamatsu's nails were so long that he didn't need needles. The way he could actually work a point was very, very effective, because you're passing through the body a signal. And all of that is part of this guidon that he talks about, that you've got to have this total understanding of yourself, your physiology, our vulnerabilities, our movement, and of course then the others. And so when you can understand yourself, you can understand others. And so then a weapon doesn't become something to be really frightened of. It's something to work around with your taisabaki and actually make him vulnerable to making a strike, so that you can create the opening. So that's how I see the interaction of all those elements combined into one. Because what he said is, men don't grow up adults. You don't become adults. I don't want to be sexist. You don't become adults until you learn to walk properly. Now you could look at that and think, well, I learned to walk when I was 3. But he's talking about all these different directional Uruki movements that go in all the directions of globality, and having the interconnections of the body to be there, and the attitudes and the mind control and controlling your own physiology. So Takamatsu would also self-heal. But when you say self-heal, if you've got a body and you can correct someone else, it's very easy then to turn those same applications of that skill onto yourself. So the ninja would also be skilled in these methods of self-correction. So you'd have to understand the acupuncture points, diet, mind control. All of these elements come into what he calls is the gyron.